You're going to humiliate me in front of everyone, Ebenezer? Let's see if you can even keep your dignity. Those were the last words Janelle James whispered, smirking at Marcus while holding the microphone, completely unaware that the man she thought she had exposed had already uncovered a secret that could ruin her. What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about trust, betrayal, and revenge. Subscribe, like, comment, and watch till the ending to share this interesting story to family and friends. My name is Ebenezer James, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet observer in every room. The man behind the lens, the one people ignore until they need a flattering angle or a last-minute edit. I'm a 34-year-old freelance videographer living in Charlotte, North Carolina, a city that looks clean and calm on the surface but hides more secrets than a late-night confession booth. I've filmed everything: weddings, corporate events, political fundraisers, even the occasional reckless bachelor party where people beg me to delete the evidence. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the night my own wife sexually humiliated me in front of an entire room of her colleagues, and the moment afterward when I revealed a secret she believed she buried so deep no one would ever find it. People always say betrayal creeps in quietly. Mine didn't. Mine walked into my life wearing red lipstick, high heels, and a smile that could slice a man open from the inside. Her name is Janelle. When I married her 7 years ago, I thought I had found someone who finally saw me, not the camera, not the work, not the projects, but me. Janelle had this ability to make any room brighter just by stepping in, and for reasons I still struggle to understand, she chose me. A man of quiet routines and predictable habits, someone who never sought drama, only stability. I thought we were building something sacred. I thought wrong. The night everything fell apart began the same way our worst nights always did, with her reflection in the mirror and me standing behind her, trying to understand who she was becoming. She dressed slowly, deliberately, her eyes scanning her outfit with surgical precision. She was getting ready for her company's quarterly mixer, a simple networking event, she called it, though nothing about the tension in her voice felt simple. I noticed she dressed differently that night, more revealing, more polished, more intentional. Not for me, not for us, but for someone. A deep red dress that clung to her, shoes she only wore when she wanted attention, and perfume she reserved for occasions where she wanted to make a statement. "Does it look too much?" she asked, giving me half a glance in the mirror. "No," I said, though my chest tightened. "You look confident." She smirked, adjusting her earrings. "Good. Tonight's important. Try not to embarrass me." Her tone wasn't playful. It was sharp, almost rehearsed. That was the moment, the first slice, that told me the woman standing there wasn't entirely mine anymore. Something had shifted in her months earlier when she started working closely under her new boss, Marcus. She began coming home late, texting with her phone turned away from me, smelling like cologne that didn't belong in our home. She became bolder, colder, and strangely empowered in a way that felt borrowed rather than earned. I didn't know it then, but the humiliation she had prepared for me that night wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, calculated, engineered, and she believed I would take it silently, the way I always had. She had no idea who I had become the moment I discovered the secret she thought she buried forever. The drive to the venue was quiet, save for the low hum of the tires on asphalt. Janelle's playlist filled the car with upbeat pop songs, but the rhythm felt ironic to me. I watched her in the rearview mirror, tracing the sharp line of her jaw, the way her eyes flicked toward her phone every few seconds. She laughed at something on the screen, a laugh that had no warmth for me. I realized in that moment that her laughter had been slowly drifting away from me for months, like a balloon caught on a high wind. The last time I had truly felt close to her was 6 months ago, when we spent a weekend in Asheville, exploring the Blue Ridge Mountains. That weekend had been a rare escape from the routine, a fragile bubble where she seemed like the woman I married. But even then, in the morning light on the deck of the cabin, I noticed her phone buzzing constantly, messages from someone named Marcus. At the time, I tried to push it away, convincing myself it was work. I told myself it wasn't my business. I had learned the hard way not to interrogate her curiosity. She hated it. Now, as we pulled up to the tall glass building where her company's mixer was being held, I felt that same unease I'd felt that weekend, only magnified. She jumped out first, heels clicking sharply on the pavement, her dress swaying with a precision I recognized from her corporate modeling photo shoots she often mocked as ridiculous. She waved at me, smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. The lobby smelled of polished wood, expensive perfume, and something metallic, anticipation, maybe even subtle malice. Colleagues were clustered around champagne flutes, laughing with the exaggerated ease of people who spent more time performing than connecting. Janelle's friend, Lauren, waved and whispered something into her ear. I didn't catch the words, but I saw her smirk. That smirk. The same one she had the night she lied about working late, after a trip to a spa where I had begged her to let me come. As we walked toward the crowd, I felt eyes on us. Not just friendly eyes. Curious eyes. Judging eyes. But most of all, I felt the magnetic pull of Marcus. He stood near the center of the room, tall, polished, his gaze sharp and predatory. He noticed me immediately, though he didn't smile. Instead, he leaned toward Janelle and whispered something, her laughter spilling out like water through fingers. My stomach twisted. Back in college, I'd studied human behavior for a semester, psychology electives, trying to understand why people hurt each other when they were supposed to love. I remembered a lecture on subtle dominance and territoriality. The predator doesn't strike until the prey is exposed. Watching them, I understood the principle in a way I hadn't before. She was the prey, the predator, and for the first time I wasn't sure which role I was supposed to play. As a few colleagues came up to shake my hand, I caught snippets of conversation. Marcus really values loyalty. It's amazing how Janelle's excelled lately, and one whispered, almost conspiratorially, she's got him wrapped around her finger. I forced a smile, my hand shaking slightly as I sipped my drink. Every word, every laugh, every glance felt like a slow, deliberate knife against the foundation of my life. And then Marcus, catching my eye, raised his glass slightly, his lips curling in a smirk that said exactly what I feared. Tonight is going to be very entertaining. I realized then that this party wasn't a mixer. It was a stage. And I was about to be the lead actor in a play written entirely to humiliate me. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. The room was alive with chatter and laughter, the kind that drifts over your head like smoke, warm and suffocating at the same time. I followed Janelle as she weaved through the clusters of colleagues, her movements precise, almost predatory, like she knew exactly who needed to see her and when. She was no longer my wife in that moment, she was a performance. Every smile, every laugh, every tilt of her head was choreographed for someone else, and I realized with a sinking heart that I had been cast as an audience member in my own marriage. Marcus stood near the center of the room, tall and impossibly confident, exuding a charisma that drew people in like moths to a flame. I watched him lean toward Janelle, his hand brushing her back ever so casually, and saw the way she responded, not just warmly, but with a familiarity that made my chest tighten. I knew that look. I had seen it years ago in the high school hallways when friends whispered about girls and boys who played the power game, only now it was magnified, more dangerous because it was my wife. I tried to remind myself of the Ebenezer I thought I was. Calm, composed, observant. I had survived difficult shoots where tempers flared, where people lied and cheated to get the perfect angle, where my lens captured moments nobody wanted remembered. Yet none of that experience had prepared me for the slow realization that my marriage was being stripped apart in real time, in front of dozens of witnesses. Backstory flashed in my mind like old film reels. 7 years ago, Janelle and I had met at a charity gala. She had this way of speaking that made you forget every other thought in your head. She laughed too loudly, danced too carelessly, but it felt real. That authenticity had drawn me in, made me believe I had found someone who would match my heart rather than my ambition. For years, I clung to that memory, telling myself the present struggles were temporary, that her late nights and secretive phone calls were just work stress. But as I watched her now, her hand lightly resting on Marcus's arm, a chilling understanding settled over me. The foundation of our relationship had been quietly shifting for months, maybe even years, without my noticing. She wasn't merely distracted, she was actively prioritizing someone else. And worse, she believed I would stay silent, that my dignity was negotiable. A few colleagues approached, their smiles polite, their questions casual, but every interaction felt loaded, like they were all in on a secret I hadn't discovered yet. One woman leaned in and whispered something about Janelle's rapid promotion, and I noticed the subtle pause in her tone, as if she were measuring my reaction. My stomach knotted and I forced a laugh I didn't feel, raising my glass. Then came the moment that sealed the tension. Janelle turned to me, the spotlight of her attention suddenly piercing my very soul. "Ebenezer, come here," she said, her tone teasing, almost playful, but there was an edge to it, an unmistakable intention behind her words. I froze, wondering what game she was about to play, and that's when the crowd's energy shifted. The conversation slowed, laughter dimmed, eyes subtly tracking our movements. I had the sense even then that everyone present knew exactly what was coming, and that I was about to become the spectacle. As I stepped forward, heart hammering, I tried to recall my father's words from years ago. "Son, if someone tries to humiliate you, Make sure your response is quiet, deliberate, and unforgettable. I had no idea how relevant that advice would be tonight. The spotlight seemed to magnify every imperfection as I stepped into the small circle Janelle had drawn around us, the chatter of the room fading to a distant hum. She held a microphone now, her fingers delicate yet commanding as if she'd done this hundreds of times before. Her smile was sharp, rehearsed, but her eyes held that dangerous glimmer, the one that said she had already planned my humiliation down to the last detail. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice carrying effortlessly, "let's play a little game." Her words were sugary, but beneath them lay something cold, deliberate. The kind where couples show how well they understand each other. The laughter that followed wasn't warm, it was predatory. I scanned the room, noting the gleam of amusement in Marcus's eyes, the sly curiosity of her colleagues, the barely contained judgment in the HR manager's expression. I suddenly realized that this wasn't a casual game. This was a setup. And I was the mark. Janelle began with small, cutting remarks, the kind designed to strip someone of confidence slowly. "Ebenezer's a quiet man," she said, her tone sweet. "Very sweet. But some might say, a little shy in the bedroom." A ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. My hands clenched at my sides, heart pounding, every memory of our private life feeling like it had been thrown into a glass box for public viewing. The cruel twist, though, was in her precision. She knew exactly how to word it so it felt playful to the others, humiliating to me, and thrilling to Marcus. I remembered back to the first week of our marriage when I had discovered her habit of keeping lists in her journal, lists of what to say, how to act, how to manipulate. I had dismissed it as quirky, cute even. But tonight, the lists came to life in the form of every jab she delivered. She leaned closer, her breath brushing my ear, whispering loud enough for the circle to hear, "Should I tell them about how fast you finish? Or how you freeze when I try something new?" The laughter erupted again, this time sharper, crueler. The room was spinning. I could feel the flush of shame creeping up my neck, but beneath it, a slow-burning anger ignited. Flashbacks surged. The time she told her friend she enjoyed feeling powerful over people, the nights she promised me she had changed, the countless mornings I had woken beside someone whose gaze was somewhere else. She thought she could humiliate me and maintain control. She thought she could dictate the narrative. And yet I had learned to observe, to wait, to notice the little things others missed. That's when my eyes caught it, Marcus's briefcase left slightly open behind him. A flash drive peeked out, metallic and unassuming, yet pregnant with possibility. It was a detail no one else seemed to notice, but I did. The crowd's laughter was deafening now, but all I could focus on was the flash drive. A surge of clarity washed over me. Janelle's carefully orchestrated performance was about to collide with a secret she thought no one would ever uncover. My mind raced back to months ago, to the whispered warnings I had ignored. Co-workers talking about Marcus, the receipts he kept, the casual mentions of indiscretion she had laughed off in private. Everything lined up now. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She had allied herself with a man who thrived on deceit, believing it would keep her ahead. And she was about to find out just how wrong she was. Please don't forget to subscribe. I waited for the moment no one anticipated. As the laughter began to fade, I stepped slightly to the side, letting my gaze linger on Marcus's briefcase. Nobody noticed me slip my hand in and retrieve the flash drive, discreet as a shadow, the metallic weight cold and heavy in my palm. Earlier that week, a coworker had offhandedly mentioned that Marcus kept receipts on employees, digital evidence of favors exchanged, boundaries crossed, secrets he threatened to expose. I hadn't given it much thought at first. But now, holding the flash drive, everything clicked. Months of suspicion, of subtle avoidance, of her sudden confidence, it all pointed to the same pattern. Back at home the night before, I had discreetly examined the drive. Emails, messages, photographs, evidence of affairs with 4 employees including Janelle. She hadn't just been flirting or lying. She had been systematically weaving herself into Marcus's manipulations, exploiting her position for power, attention, and a thrill she couldn't find at home. And in her arrogance, she had underestimated one thing: me. I remembered the night I had found her journal entries years ago, detailing ways to bend people to her will. At the time I thought it was childish. Now it was prophetic. I had everything I needed to turn her own stagecraft against her. The next time she called me forward, microphone in hand, ready to humiliate me further, I spoke instead. "I think the audience deserves a little more context." Murmurs rippled through the room. Confusion. A few curious glances. I inserted the flash drive into the nearest laptop connected to the projector. The first slide appeared, illuminating the room with a stark white light. Everyone's laughter cut off mid-chuckle. Marcus's eyes went wide. Janelle's face froze. The first clip showed him making promises to employees in exchange for favors. The second clip showed Janelle in private moments she had assumed were hidden. The third revealed her boasting to a friend, convinced I would never discover the truth. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than any insult, louder than any laugh. Every person in that room knew the gravity of what they were witnessing. And Janelle realized she had finally lost control. The crowd's stunned murmurs filled the room as I let the projector play the clips in full, letting the weight of each betrayal settle on the witnesses. Marcus's face turned pale, his carefully maintained arrogance crumbling under exposure. Colleagues who had feared speaking up now whispered frantically, some recording on their phones, some pointing out discrepancies they had suspected but could never prove. Janelle tried to intervene, her hand reaching for me, her voice frantic. "Ebenezer, stop. You don't understand." But I didn't respond. I let the evidence speak. I let her own hubris narrate the story that had been hidden from the world for too long. Backstory surged again. The promotion she received months ago, whispered at the office as well-deserved, had been manipulated by Marcus using Janelle as his pawn. She had thought she was gaining power. She was only amplifying his control. I realized that every sly comment, every carefully timed joke, every late night she claimed was work had been part of a calculated dance. And now, every person present could see it. Janelle's colleagues turned toward her, their expressions shifting from surprise to betrayal, to fear, to vindication. The power dynamics that had governed the office were dismantled in an instant. Marcus attempted to shut down the laptop to regain control, but HR personnel and supervisors moved quickly, their presence solidifying the chaos into accountability. I stood tall, letting the silence stretch, watching as she realized that the narrative she thought she controlled was now mine to expose. And in that moment, I understood something my father had once told me. Dignity is not in hiding your pain, but in owning the stage when it threatens to be stolen. Janelle's eyes filled with fear, not remorse. Marcus's arrogance evaporated, replaced with the desperate understanding that he had underestimated both her recklessness and my patience. And as I stepped back, I felt a cold satisfaction settle in. Justice, slow and deliberate, had begun. Please don't forget, click the subscribe button. The room became chaotic. Phones came out. Videos were shared. Colleagues began whispering, some crying, some laughing nervously at the spectacle. Marcus was escorted by security, arguing, his charm dissolved into panic. Janelle's face turned crimson, her perfect poise unraveling as the weight of exposure sank in. I remembered back to quiet moments at home when she had bragged about manipulating situations, the way she would list tactics to me as if testing my awareness. Those memories fueled my calm in the storm. The room may have been erupting around me, but I was untouchable. Her whispered pleas for me to stop, for me to delete the footage, only strengthened my resolve. She had underestimated my patience, my capacity for observation, and my ability to wield truth like a scalpel. The employees who had suffered in silence now found courage in the evidence. Some approached HR, others consoled each other, while a few simply watched, understanding that the private games of manipulation had been unveiled to the light. Janelle's attempts to salvage the situation were futile. Every colleague now had access to the proof of her duplicity. And I realized, the humiliation she had intended for me had been completely reversed. Please don't forget to subscribe. Later, in the empty corridor, Janelle chased after me, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. Tears streamed down her face, but it was fear, not regret. "Ebenezer, you don't understand. We can fix this," she cried. I stopped, turned, and looked her straight in the eye. "You fixed it yourself," I said calmly. "I just removed the stage lights." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing, realizing that her control had evaporated. I thought of our marriage, our 7 years together, and of the countless moments where she had believed she could bend me without consequence. Tonight I had proven otherwise. Within 48 hours, Marcus was fired, HR investigations expanded, and multiple employees came forward with their stories. Janelle was suspended pending review, left to grapple with a reputation destroyed in a single evening. I had filed for divorce quietly, choosing dignity over spectacle. I packed my camera, my lenses, my old journals, and walked out into the dawn, leaving behind the life I once thought was mine. Weeks later, I received a text from Janelle. "We need to talk. I found something you need to see. It's about Marcus." I didn't respond. I smiled faintly, thinking of my father's words. Some stories end quietly, others only begin when the audience thinks the curtain has fallen. As I looked out over Charlotte's skyline, the sun casting a soft glow over buildings that held both secrets and memories, I realized the truth. Sometimes the most devastating betrayal is also the most enlightening. And the next chapter, whatever it held, was mine to write. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting stories.